Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Lesson 1, Part 3 of PLAR English. Hope everyone's having a great start to their fall, great start to this chorus. I just want to walk through you some announcements. So we are in week 2 of classes in Term 1A. The last day of class will be November 2nd, so it's a 9-week schedule, and we're on week 2 right now. And we meet Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m., and that's Central Standard Time. WASA Distance Education Center is inviting all students to apply for our upcoming school year. And for those who have already applied and registered, if you submit your first 2 lessons by October 17th, so that would be lessons 1 and 2 of PLAR English, you have a chance to enter to win an iPad. So don't miss it on that opportunity. So a little extra motivation to get at least your first 2 lessons done by October 17th for a chance to win an iPad. I'll post that on my Facebook, that's Laverty Wasa, and give you lots of reminders as we get closer to that date. There are many ways you can watch and listen live. They're up on the screen right now. So that's the number to phone in, the radio station to listen in on, the Bell ExpressVu channel to listen on, the online radio link, and of course the Zoom link. So these are the ways that you can watch and listen to my chorus live. And if you can't listen to it live, you can watch it at your own time on YouTube. So you can search for Laverty Wasa. All courses will be uploaded there the day after. So tomorrow morning, when I come into work, the first thing I'll do is I will add one more video right here to our YouTube channel. So if you go there now, you'll see Lesson 1 Part 1, Lesson 1 Part 2. And if you go there tomorrow morning after, say, 10:30 in the morning, you'll see Lesson 1 Part 3. You've got many ways you can submit your work. So you can give it to your DEC to scan and email it or fax it. You can scan and email it and send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca and CC it to me. You can fax it to this number right here. And you can also take photos with your phone and then email it or send it on Facebook Messenger. So you got a few ways to get your work to me. And if you're unsure on any of this stuff, you can get in touch with me. So I'll put that slide up in a sec. So your next steps are going to be to read through the study guide if you already haven't. I want you to contact me through email, Facebook Messenger, or phone or text if you haven't already done so. And you should be reading through the pages 1 through 30 of Lesson 1 and be making a plan for completing the first 4 key questions. So you don't have to have these key questions done right now, but I think that's the timeline you should be on. You should be looking at completing the first 4 key questions of Lesson 1. So you don't want to save it all to the very end. You want to start getting a headway on some of this stuff. This is my office hours right here. If you phone the WASA office anytime during this time, you can talk to me directly. Or if you wanted to send me a Facebook message, this is the best time to do it. Anytime during these hours, I'll be sitting at my desk, with the exception of these 2 times right here, because that's where I'm teaching. But the half hour before the class and the half hour after class, I'll be sitting at my desk. So if you got any questions, then feel free to do that. But, these times right here, 9 to 3, Monday, Thursday, and Friday, great time. Or, 10 to 2, Tuesday, Wednesday, that's when you're going to find me at my desk. That's when I'm going to be the most responsive to your Facebook messages and your emails and your phone calls. So here's how you get in touch with me. I've got 2 email addresses. I will check both of them. You can find me on Facebook Messenger. You can add me as a friend, or you can just simply communicate with me through Messenger. Or you can phone the office and get me at extension 2211. Just phone the WAS office right there, and you will get in touch with me. So that's the many ways you can find me here in the building. And like I said, consult my office hours. That's the best time to get in touch with me. Okay, and then we'll jump right into today's lecture. Just got to find a way to see this whole screen because it's not. I don't want to have to keep doing that. Okay, view. Let's go 75. Oops. Let's zoom in, maybe 125. There we go. Okay, so welcome to PLAR English. I've decided to change things up a little bit. So rather than just simply going through the course material, which you can do on your own time, I thought I'd make the presentation a little more interactive and hopefully a little more engaging and fun for you listening in at home or watching, on YouTube. So I'm going to start things off with the word of the day. So I wanted to do a word in English and a word in Ojibwe. I only speak English, and I have full respect for anybody who knows more than one language. I can kind of speak French, but not really. I know a lot of French words, but I don't know Ojibwe or any indigenous language, but I would love to learn more about it, learn more languages. I actually just got Rosetta Stone on my phone, and I'm trying to learn a bit of the language. So this word right here, that's our word of the day. So please let me know if I'm not pronouncing this correctly. So again, I'm not really teaching these words. I'm learning them myself, but there's a reason why I'm bringing this up, and you'll see that in a sec. So mashkanuje, hope I pronounced that right. That is, of course, the word for pike right here, this lovely fish right here. I've never caught one myself. I wish I did, but I've never caught one. In English, you usually hear it referred to as a muskie. The full word is, of course, muskellunge, but that word is called what we do is we call it a loan word. And a loan word is a word that another language borrows, right? So there was no word for muskie. There was no word for that fish. That word came from indigenous people. In English, it got added to the English language. So, and if we look at the origins of the word, so in English, it's ugly plus pike. So, so again, you guys got to let me know if I'm saying this wrong, but manadad is ugly and ginuje is pike. You add those together, you get mashkinuje, which is an ugly pike, which is kind of unfair to the pike, but yeah, it's not the most prettiest fish in the lake, but there it is right there. So the word, the word, I'm going to consult my list again. Manadad is an adjective, so a describing word that it translates to ugly, and it describes a noun, ganuje, in this case, an ugly pike. Combined together, they give us the word ugly pike, okay? So I wanted to give everybody a review of the 9 parts of speech. So we talked a lot about this the first 2 classes in Lesson 1, Part 1, Lesson 1, Part 2. And I thought it might be better if we just went through it part by part, parts of speech, each one, and then give you some examples, and then show you how they actually work in a sentence. So we have, and I've grouped them here together. I think that right here, these are probably the most common. It's hard to have a language if you don't have verbs, nouns, and pronouns. So the most common, the most used. And then these ones here, especially these 2 are, well, articles as well, but these are our, these 2 together are kind of like our describing words. And then these ones here all end in tion, so I just kind of group those ones together, but we will go through these one by one. So a noun is the name of a person, a place, or a thing. I've got 3 examples: teacher, Sioux Lookout, happiness. Sioux Lookout is capitalized, capital S, capital L, because it's a proper noun. More on that later. So proper nouns, so these are specific. They get capitalized. So those are specific nouns. We have our verbs. These are our action words: ran, run, ran, running. These are the tenses. So someone is running right now. That's the, present tense. And again, more on this later, but good to know it now. So that's present tense, past tense, and future. So I will run a marathon, I have ran a marathon, and I'm running a marathon right now. Pronouns is a word that takes the place of a noun, like I, he, or she. There's a lot more than that, but those are the most common ones. Adverbs, these are how an action is done. It tells us how we do something. So quickly, slowly, expertly. Adjectives describe nouns. They tell us if something is soft, bright, red. These often use the five senses. So that is our touch, our taste, our smell, our sight, and our hearing, right? So when we write fiction, when we want to be descriptive, or if we're storytellers and we want to tell somebody a good story, we're going to use lots of adjectives. We're going to use lots of describing words. So adjectives and adverbs, they're easy to confuse, but the word verb is in the word adverb, so it gives you a clue as to what it describes. An adverb describes an action, and an adjective describes a noun. But they're both describing words. They tell us about something. And then articles. Articles are kind of hard to define, but all you really have to know is that they're used before nouns, and they come in three varieties in the English language: a, an, and the. And they always come before a noun. So the shoe, an animal, a TV show, and they just tell us if it's a specific one. If it's we would say, I was looking for a restaurant. Are you sure you were at the right restaurant? So it gives you information about a noun, and it comes before a noun. So those are our articles, right? So those are our. Oh, we're not done yet. So conjunctions. These join words or groups of words together. And, but, and yet are the most common ones. Prepositions. These show a relationship of noun, pronoun to other words. So they tell us where something is a lot of the time. So from, in, beside. So on the lake, under my bed, beside the table. Those are prepositions, right? They tell us where something is, where a noun is. I'm sitting beside my son at the hockey game. We came in from the cold. So a lot of prepositions are directional. They tell you where something is, or where something is going, or where something is in relation to somebody else. So if you're giving somebody directions, or you're trying to describe what a room looks like, or what a place in the forest looks like, or whatever, you're going to use prepositions. And the last one are interjections, and these are words or phrases to show strong emotion. I've used two here, wow and hey. And they usually have an exclamation mark on the end of them, so it's something you would shout at someone from across the street. It's probably the best way I could describe an interjection. They don't quite fit in with the other parts of speech. They're not nouns. They're not verbs. They're just things that humans say when they get excited or they want to show strong emotion. Okay, we're doing well for time. So these are the parts of speech. So a lot of your key questions are in lesson 1 are to do with these parts of speech. So what you should be aiming for is you should be able to look at this list of 9 parts of speech, and you should know what they are just by looking at this list and not looking at the definitions. That's what you want to work up to. So something you might want to practice is to maybe write these 9 parts of speech down, and then just write down an example on the side. You're like, I'll do now. So a noun. I'm a hockey player, and I'm a coach, so I've got hockey on the mind. So a noun is a skate. Of course, skate can also be a verb, right? Depending on the context. But in this case, I mean the thing, the skate, the thing you put on your foot. The verb, I will do speak, what I'm doing right now. A pronoun, let's do me. That's a pronoun that stands in place of Mike Laverty. So, an adverb, let's see. I think sometimes I talk too quickly. So let me know if I do, but that's when I speak, sometimes I speak quickly. An adjective, tall. An article, the. A conjunction is yet. A preposition, I'll go with under. And an interjection, okay, we got wow, we got hey, we got, how about we'll do yes. There we go. So you should be able to do that yourself without any help. So, and then you know you have it when you can do something like that, when you can just run through the list. And then you know what all these 9 parts of speech are. And I guarantee you, if you can do that, you'll be ahead of a lot of people. A lot of people speaking the English language. I've mentioned this a few times, but it's worth mentioning over. It's that, you know, a lot of people who speak the English language, or any language, they may not know what these things are, but they use them every day. So you use these things every day. There's no way you can speak a language and not know what these things are. Part of your brain knows what these things are. It's just putting a name to it. That's the real challenge. So every time we meet, I'd like to give you a headline. So this is a real headline. I got this from my subscription to the Globe and Mail. I love the Globe and Mail. I have the app on my phone. One thing I love about the Globe and Mail is that, oh my God, look how terrible my handwriting is. Let's see if I can try that and do it a little better. Let's try that. Globe. That looks like a... Yeah, I love the Globe and Mail. The app, it reads to me. So if I'm too lazy to read the article, I can just hit the play button and it'll read it to me. So this was a real article that appeared in actually, it was yesterday's paper, but good enough for today. And our headline says, Ukraine forces push further in Kharkiv region as Russia scatters in chaotic retreat. And then here's the article continues here. Ukrainian troops continued their week-long push in the eastern Kharkiv region on Monday, liberating more villages and towns as the Russian forces that had occupied the region since March scattered in chaotic retreat. So if you followed the news last year, Russia invades Ukraine in March. And then now finally the Ukrainian army is able to push back, and the Russian forces are being forced to get out of the country. And they want to surrender, but the Ukrainian forces aren't letting them. They're pushing them out of the country. So here is our headline once again. Now I want you to look at that headline and just take a minute or so, or maybe 30 seconds, just because we don't have too much time tonight, but just look at that headline and just try to think, like, what are the nouns? What are the things in this sentence? What are the verbs? Is there a pronoun in there? Is there an adjective? What are the verbs? What is being done in this sentence? Or what actions are being described? So what are my nouns? What are my verbs? Is there a pronoun? Is there an adjective? Do we have a description? Is there an adverb? Are we being told how something is being done? Is there a conjunction? Is there an interjection? Tell you what, there's definitely not an interjection. You're usually not going to see an interjection in a serious headline. You might see one in like a funny or like lighthearted headline. Do we see a preposition? So let's break that down. So we definitely have nouns. It's virtually impossible to write a sentence in the English language without a noun. So you need a noun. The sentence has to be about something. So there's usually a noun. So in this case, we've got Ukraine forces. So if we're being technical, this is actually a noun phrase. So Ukraine forces, they combine forces to become one noun, right? So the Ukraine forces, they push further. So the word further is an adverb that modifies the verb push. So we could simply say Ukraine forces push in Kharkiv region, but they're not just pushing. They've already pushed into that region. Now they're going further. So the word further tells us how they pushed. So push is a verb. Further is an adverb. In is a preposition. They're not pushing out of the region. They're pushing into it. It tells us it. So remember, a preposition tells us what a noun is doing. In this case, that noun would be our Ukrainian forces. So they're pushing in. And where are they pushing in? To the Kharkiv region, which is another noun phrase, okay? So Kharkiv is a region of Ukraine. I've never been to Ukraine, but that's what it is. It's a noun phrase, technically. But it functions like a noun. And then the second part of that headline, as. So as is a conjunction, and it combines this part of the headline with this part of the headline. So Russia, that's a proper noun, and we always capitalize proper nouns. So as Russia scatters, so scatters is a verb. In, we just saw, is another preposition. Chaotic. Oh, I made a mistake. Look at this. I'm catching a mistake in my slideshow. Chaotic is not an adverb, because chaotic is modifying the word noun. So we could say Russia scatters in defeat. Sorry, Russia scatters in retreat, but we're saying they scatter in chaotic retreat, which is a very special kind of retreat. So I'm going to cross that out. And chaotic is an adjective. I could pretend like I did that on purpose, but I was too slow to do that, so I have to own my mistake. So chaotic is an adjective, and it modifies this word right here. And that's a great word, chaotic, right? So you can have an orderly retreat. You know, most armies don't plan on retreating, but sometimes they have to retreat. And sometimes that retreat might be done in a calm and measured and way. But sometimes, especially if the army that's coming after you is on top of you, that retreat is going to be chaotic. So that's the kind of retreat that the Russian forces had. So now we're going to break down sentence structure, and we're going to so again, this is all covering stuff in your lesson. It's just I'm hoping to do it in a more interactive way. So sentence structure. So a sentence has a few definitions. One definition is that a sentence expresses a complete thought or idea. A more technical definition is, you know, a sentence must have, so a sentence must have a subject and a predicate. Now, what do those things mean, okay? What is a subject? What is a predicate? So the subject is the person, the place, or the thing that the sentence is about. Okay? So we just saw in that previous example, the sentence was about the Ukrainian forces. So the Ukraine forces. That was my subject. So my subject in that last sentence was the Ukraine forces. That's what the subject is about. And it's not just about the Ukraine forces. It's about the Russian forces. It's about the retreat. It's about the Kharkiv region. It's about a lot of things, but it's mainly about the Ukraine forces and what they did and what their actions led to. So they're the subject. The predicate is what is said about the subject. So what is said about the subject, or you know, this, or it could be what happens. What happens to the subject. What the subject did, what happens to the subject. what the subject was thinking, what the subject had for lunch, that kind of stuff, right? So, but it's what is said about the subject, not the subject itself. Here's an example. Let's look at this sentence right here. Mike caught a muskie yesterday, which is a complete fabrication. That's a lie. I did not catch a muskie yesterday, but for the purposes of today's lecture, I did. So, Mike caught a muskie. That's a sentence that we can write in the English language. Now, what's the subject of that sentence and what is the predicate? What is that sentence about? Or who? Maybe in this case it would be who was it about? So it's kind of confusing because this sentence is definitely, about a muskie. It's definitely about a time, right? But what is it really about? What's the primary importance? Who's the most important, or what's the most important thing in this sentence? And that's usually the person doing the action. So if you guessed Mike, you were correct. Mike is the subject of the sentence. Mike caught a muskie yesterday. This is what the sentence is about. And then the predicate is going to be the stuff in green, caught a muskie yesterday. So Mike is the subject, and the stuff in green is the predicate, okay? So that's your subject right here. And this is the predicate, what is said about. What is said about the subject. And then as we get further along in our sentence structure, the object. The object of the sentence would be the muskie. And then sometimes in English we call this the subject-verb-object rule. So a lot of English sentences follow that rule. There's a subject, the person who's doing the action. There's a verb, which is the thing they're doing. And there's the object, the thing they're doing it to. So Mike's the subject, the object is the muskie, and the verb in this case would be caught, right? So that's my subject, verb, and object. But what we're really trying to focus on here today, or for this slide, is to understand the difference between the predicate and the subject. So again, the subject is Mike, and the predicate is what is said about Mike, or what Mike did in this case. So what I want to do is I want to take one more look at today's headline, the headline about the Ukrainian forces. Now, if we look at this sentence, if we look at the headline, we can see that the headline is actually one sentence that could be split into two sentences. So it's written as one sentence, but it could be written as two if we know the parts of speech. And so as a writer or as an editor, so when you're writing and when you start writing and start to get better at writing, one of the things you realize is that writing it's about editing. It's about taking stuff that's already on the page and making changes to it. So a lot of writers experience this as part of their process. They have a part of their brain that just puts idea on the page, and they don't worry about the grammar. They don't worry about spelling. They don't worry about the parts of speech. All they do is try to get as many words as they can onto their page or onto their phone or onto their laptop, however you write. Most writers, that's the process they do, whether they're journalists or novel writers or university professors, college professors, high school teachers, blog writers, people on Twitter. There's a part of your brain that just generates ideas, and there's a part of your brain that looks at those ideas and starts to tweak them and change them. So a lot of writing is about making choices. So right here, I want to demonstrate to you how, as writers and editors, we can make choices in language and we can change the meaning. So again, this is one sentence that could be split into two sentences, and we'll see that the word as is a conjunction. So this word, and I've tried to color code them, so conjunctions are in pink. So that conjunction as, it joins together. I'm going to say this is part 1 of the sentence, and this is part 2. Now, when I was a kid, there was a cartoon on TV. It was called Schoolhouse Rocks, and they would try to teach kids about grammar and English and history and all kinds of stuff like that. And they had a song called Conjunction Junction, What's Your Function? And they compared conjunctions to a coupling. So, not sure if you know what a coupling is, but if you've got like a train on tracks, and you've got the boxcar right here, and you've got a boxcar right here, there's a thing called a coupling that joins them together. And so this is sentence 1, this is sentence 2, and the conjunction is the part that puts them together. So the conjunction is a coupling that combines 2 sentences or 2 groups of words together, and it makes them work together, and we'll see how that works. So the first part of the sentence says, Ukraine forces push further in the Kharkiv region. So if I put a period right here, that's a complete sentence. Ukraine forces are my subject, and the predicate is push further in the Kharkiv region. That could stand alone as its own sentence, but in this case it doesn't, because the word as joins them, okay? Again, Russia scatters in chaotic retreat. That could be a complete sentence left on its own. It's got a subject, Russia. It's got a predicate, scatters in chaotic retreat. What they did is they combined those 2 words with this conjunction. Now, the conjunction doesn't just join them, it actually gives us information. So the Ukraine forces are pushing further as Russia scatters in chaotic retreat. So it means that they're happening at the same time. So as this person's doing this at the same time that this thing is happening, right? Now we can rewrite this headline by combining the 2 sentences with a different conjunction, right? So we can replace the word as with a different conjunction. And I really want you to pay attention to how it changes the meaning of the headline. Because that's what happens when we start to make different choices as writers, as editors. Words, even changing one word in a sentence can have a huge impact on the meaning that you're trying to convey to someone, right? So we're just going to change that. So right here, we had the word as right there. But what I've done is I've changed the conjunction to the word because. So the Ukraine forces push further into Kharkiv region because Russia scatters in chaotic retreat. That changes the meaning. The meaning now is because Russia scattered because they did this. That may or may not be true, right? But it changes the meaning, right? So the meaning in the headline before is saying that these 2 things are happening at the same time. It's not saying that this is happening because this happened, right? So we've changed the meaning of that sentence. We could also combine the 2 parts of the sentence with punctuation. And the best punctuation to use here is a semicolon. So for those of you who have read ahead in the lesson plan, or lesson 1, you will have gotten to the part on punctuation. So I think the semicolon is probably one of the most misused pieces of punctuation we have in the English language. So I'm really hoping I can teach you how to use it correctly. So technically, you only want to use a semicolon to combine 2 sentences that could stand on their own, right? But another conjunction, right? That's a conjunction right there. But is a conjunction, but are also directly related to each other, right? So these 2 sentences could be on their own, but the writer or the editor has combined them for a reason, right? So Ukraine forces push further in Kharkiv region semicolon, Russia scatters in chaotic retreat. So that's pretty much the same meaning as the original headline. Not too much difference between the two. This one is the one they chose, and this headline tells us that this first part is happening as this part happens. So they're happening at the same time. This one is just telling us that this happened and this also happened. It doesn't really tell us that they're happening at the same time. It's kind of implied that they're happening at the same time, but it's not clear. So making it because really changes the meaning of the sentence. But this one is not really that much of a change. But it just shows you how you can play with language and you can just swap one thing for another. But when you do that, you really change the meaning of a sentence. So this got me to thinking that, could we write a sentence that uses all 9 parts of speech, and would that sentence make sense? So I tried my best to write one, and it wasn't really making sense. And then I Googled it, and I found a grammar site, and the person had about 5 different examples, and I said, oh, okay, I see what they did there. So I had a hard time with the interjection. So you'll see what I did here in a sec. So I tried to write a sentence that used all 9 parts of speech, but still made sense and was still readable. So I've mentioned this a few times. I'm a hockey coach. I love playing hockey, and the Montreal Canadiens are my favorite team. And yesterday they announced that they have announced their youngest team captain of all time, this guy right here, Nick Suzuki. So he is the latest team captain of the Montreal Canadiens. So they announced that on their Twitter feed. That's how I found out about it. So I found out about it on Twitter. And I was really excited because I love this guy, and I think he's going to make for a great captain. So when I heard the news, this is what I said. Wow! The Montreal Canadiens picked their new team captain and happily announced the good news on Twitter. So that is a complete sentence. Even though the word wow has an exclamation mark, technically speaking, the interjection wow is part of the whole sentence, right? So this whole thing is one sentence, and as we'll see in a second, it does contain all 9 parts of speech. So again, I want you to look at that before I go to the next slide and just ask yourself, I've already told you one, right? So I've already told you, and you should recognize that from the examples. So wow, that's an interjection. So as I mentioned before, it's virtually impossible to write a sentence. I should look that up. Can you write a sentence without a subject? I don't think you can, but maybe you can. What is the subject of this sentence? There's a lot of nouns in here, right? So again, a subject is going to be the noun, right? So what is this sentence really about, right? So what nouns do we have? And we've got a few nouns in here. What are the verbs? What is the subject doing? Or what are they doing, or what did they do? We have one pronoun in here, and let me know if you see it. There's an action, and there's a description of how that action was done. That's an adverb. Excuse me. We have a noun, and we have a description of that noun. And we have 3 proper nouns. We have Montreal, we have Canadians, and we have Twitter. Professional sports teams are always capitalized. Same thing goes for companies like Twitter are always capitalized. The first letter of a proper noun, or in this case, is always capitalized. So wow is capitalized, so is that T. Always good to go over some capitalization rules. So let's have a look here. So wow's my interjection. The is an article. It's if we're going to be technical, and we should be because we're here to learn, it is a definitive article. There's only one Montreal Canadiens team in the world, so they are the Montreal Canadiens. So in this case, it's the capital T Montreal Canadiens. Same with Ukraine forces. This is a noun phrase. So the Montreal Canadiens, we treat that as a noun phrase, but of course, Montreal is a noun, so was Canadians. Picked. That's what they did. That's the verb. They picked their. Pronouns stand in place of a noun. Which noun does there stand in place of? This one right here. So the Montreal Canadiens picked their new captain. So, I can't believe it. I did it again. I made another mistake. That's 2 on the evening. 2 penalties for Mike here. The word new is not an adverb. It's an adjective that describes the noun captain. Nick Suzuki isn't just the Montreal Canadiens captain. He is their new captain. So captain is a noun, and the word new is an adjective that describes that noun. And that's our conjunction. Remember, that's the word conjunction is combining the 2 parts of the sentence. So this could be a sentence. Wow, the Montreal Canadiens picked their new captain. I could put a period there. That is a complete sentence, right? The Montreal Canadiens are my subject. Pick their new captain. That's my predicate. That could stand alone as a complete sentence. But we added the word and to connect them. So my conjunction said, and they happily announced. So I got it right here. So announced is a verb. But they didn't just announce it. They were happy because they are happy. They're pumped. They got a new captain. So how did they announce it? They announced it happily. That's an adverb. It tells us how a verb was done. The good news. So again, it's not just news. It's good news. News can be good. It can be bad. It can be terrible. It can be tragic. News can be a lot of things. In this case, it's good news. On is a preposition. It tells us a relationship. So, things are on TV, they're on your phone, and they get announced on Twitter. And Twitter is a noun. Not just any noun, it's a proper noun. So there we go. They happily announced the good news on Twitter. Happily announced the good news on Twitter. Now that, say if we just went from here to here, that would not be a complete sentence. And happily announced the good news on Twitter. That cannot stand alone on its own sentence. So I couldn't replace the word and with a semicolon. I would have to get creative with that. So that it's technically it's called a clause in that case. So sentences are broken up into clauses. That's like the building blocks of a sentence. Sometimes the clauses can be their own sentence. Sometimes they're just a part of a sentence. So we're going to get more into that tomorrow. We're going to get more into sentence structure, how to write a good sentence, how to identify mistakes. So everything you see on this page, that would be a sentence fragment. And a sentence fragment is a bunch of words that cannot stand alone as a sentence. They have to have stuff before it or after it to make it a complete sentence. So that's my complete sentence right here. Right? So maybe it's easier if we just see the full sentence right here. So that right there, that's great. That is a complete sentence. That works. This right here, no, that doesn't work. That's not a complete sentence because there's no subject there, right? There's no subject. There's a verb. We have the verb announced. We have announced the good news. If we said the Montreal Canadiens happily announced the good news on Twitter, that would be fine. but there's no subject here. So that is not a complete sentence. It's a sentence fragment. But if we get rid of that period and we make it all one sentence, that's fine. That checks out. Okay, moving right along. So want to spend a little bit of time talking about pronouns. We did talk about this last Thursday, but it's an important concept to understand. So a pronoun stands in place for a noun or gives us more information about a noun. Okay, so pronouns and nouns are parts of speech. And they're very similar, and they have very similar functions, but they have a relationship to each other. In the same way that adverbs and verbs go together. You can't have an adverb unless there's a verb for it to modify. Same thing for like an adjective, right? You can't say like I went to the store and bought a red. You know, you can't buy a red, but you could buy a red pair of shoes, or you could buy a blue hat, right? But you can't go to the store and buy a blue, you know, unless unless that's an actual like product. But in that case, it would be a proper noun. But you can't really buy an adjective. The adjective has to have a noun to describe. An adverb needs a verb to modify, and a pronoun has to have a noun to stand in place of. Sometimes that pronoun is implied, like in the case, so if I say like, I am teaching a class. That is a complete sentence. I is the subject. Am teaching a class is the predicate. But I is a pronoun. So, I am teaching a class. The I stands in place for the speaker. So, if you were to read that sentence, I am teaching a class, you would know that who the speaker is, and I'm the speaker, right? So Mike Laverty is the noun, and then I is the pronoun that stands in place of my name. So the noun that the pronoun stands in place for is called the antecedent. So ante is we call that a prefix. A prefix is a part of a word that comes before. Pre means before, and ante literally means before. So when we read something, the noun almost always comes before the pronoun. You hear the noun first, and then you hear the pronoun that replaces it. Because the pronoun usually doesn't make sense unless you've heard the noun, right? So that's what we call the antecedent. It happens before. Let's look at some examples, okay? So in that previous example on Twitter, the Montreal Canadiens, they're a noun, and the pronoun that replaces them is the word their. Because it's a plural noun, okay? It's got an S on the end of it, so we would use the word their to replace the Montreal Canadiens. Here's another example. Robin Doolittle is a reporter for the Globe and Mail. She wrote a book called Crazy Town about Rob Ford. Really great book. I read that when it first came out. Really, really cool book. So if I'm reading about this woman in the Globe and Mail, or say I'm reading about her on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, somebody might tell me Robin Doolittle is a reporter for the Globe and Mail. She wrote a book called Crazy Town about Rob Ford. So Robin Doolittle, that's my antecedent, and the word she replaces her name. And we use pronouns because they make English or any language a little more efficient. It gets repetitive to say someone's name over and over again. It's a lot faster to just say he or she or whatever pronoun they're comfortable using. So here's an example from my life. So my sister Tanya and her daughter Paige are visiting me this Christmas. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because sometimes the noun being replaced, or sometimes the antecedent, is just one word. But sometimes it's a noun phrase or a noun group, right? So in this case, all this blue text, my sister Tanya and her daughter Paige, so that's two people, two women, right? That's the antecedent. So my sister Tanya and her daughter Paige are visiting me this Christmas. I hope they are bringing me lots of presents. I hope they are bringing lots of presents with them. So the word they replaces that. So instead of me saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words, I can just say they. And you know what I'm talking about because I've just told you about them, right? You're not going to confuse they with somebody else. So when you're writing, when you're editing, there shouldn't be too much space between the antecedent and the pronoun, right? The reader shouldn't have to guess what the pronoun is replacing. It should be pretty obvious. They shouldn't have to do any guesswork. And that arguably is the point of writing, is that, or the point of good writing, is so our reader doesn't have to guess. They don't have to do any guesswork. They know what we're talking about. Unless you're writing fiction, or you're writing a mystery and you're trying to be confusing on purpose, but usually good writing is clear writing. And the reader shouldn't have to ask. They should just know. So the pronoun that we use must be consistent or agree with the antecedent. So the following sentence uses the wrong pronoun, okay? So I hope she is bringing lots of presents with them, okay? Now you see the words she and them. I hope she is bringing lots of presents with them, okay? So I've used the wrong pronoun. So because my sister Tanya and her daughter Paige, that's two people. I can't use the word she to replace two people. It doesn't make any sense because she is one person, right? I have to use the word they, right? I hope they are bringing lots of presents with them. That is correct, okay? That's correct. This one is incorrect, okay? That's incorrect usage. Now, it's a little more complicated than that. So the verb that we use must also be consistent or agree with the antecedent, okay? So here's an example of that. The following sentence has the wrong verb, okay? I hope they is bringing lots of presents with them, okay? They and is, they don't agree. They're arguing. They're not consistent with each other. I hope they is bringing lots of presents with them. That doesn't work. That's incorrect usage. How do we fix it? I hope they are. All right? So we use the verb are when we're talking about plural nouns, more than one. So the Canada Geese are flying home. Or, the Canada Geese are going home for the summer, or for the winter, sorry. That Canada Goose is eating all my vegetables, right? So we use is for one thing, and we use are for many things, right? So I hope they are. Now, the pronoun agrees with the verb, right? So a lot of this is what we call consistency or agreement, right? So certain words have to agree with each other. And if they don't agree with each other, they're incorrect. But if they do agree with each other, that's what we call correct usage, okay? We've only got 2 minutes left, so we won't have time to go into the next lesson. But actually, no, we'll just touch on that briefly. So verbs have to have a tense to them. And in the English language, we have 3 tenses, past, present, and future. Interestingly enough, some languages don't have tenses. They just have right now, or they have no present tense, or they only have the past, or you know what I mean? But in English, we have past, present, and future. There's variations on this, but most verbs are going to be in these 3 main categories. Mike caught a muskie yesterday. Mike is catching a muskie right now. And Mike wants to catch a muskie tomorrow. So those are my 3 different tenses that I can use And if I said, you know, like if I said Mike catching a muskie yesterday, that just sounds wrong, right? Mike catching a muskie yesterday, because this is the past tense, and catching is a present tense verb, right? It doesn't work here, right? So that's it for today. We're gonna pick up on this tomorrow. We're gonna start with the past, present, and future. We're gonna do some capitalization. We're gonna do some punctuation, and then we're gonna get into some fun stuff. And we're gonna finally start marking up and editing some sentences and putting on our writing and editing caps. So I look forward to that, and we will see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock.